license migration. This webinar is intended for engineering support resources that have the responsibility to ensure ongoing availability of software for design, engineering, and manufacturing teams in your company. This webinar is not a training class, but rather a high-level presentation on what is changing, why, when, and who will be affected so that you can plan accordingly and make informed decisions. We view this as a customer service for our clients due to the number of emails and phone calls we receive on a daily basis asking these very questions. So the takeaways from the webinar today should include, number one, a better understanding of what DSLS is. Number two, how does this migration affect me and when? And number three, provide you an ability to plan internally. We will conclude the webinar today with a Q&A session, and we will offer an FAQ to all attendees. The FAQ will be sent separately via email by tomorrow morning. Next slide, Brian. Well, so first I'd like to introduce your presenters today. My name is Frank Thomas. I'm with Adaptive Corporation, and we thank you for joining us. Brian, if you could toggle to the next slide, please. I'm joined today by Brian Olson, who should be changing the slide here momentarily. Brian is our technical support specialist. Brian has over 15 years experience training users and supporting CATIA, Smart Team, and now the Innovia V6 platform. Now for some quick housekeeping. Brian, are you still there?
I'm here, Frank. I don't know what you see.
I see customer support webinar, LUM to DSLS migration. I see slide number 1. There you go. Now I see slide number 2. So now for some quick housekeeping. Most of you may be familiar with the GoToWebinar service, but for those of you who are not, you will notice that there's a user interface in the upper right-hand side of your screen that provides a chat panel. Please use this panel to enter questions as they occur to you during the presentation. We will queue your questions to be addressed during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. The webinar should last roughly 30 minutes plus whatever time is required for Q&A. Next slide, Brian, please. There we go. Now on to the agenda. Brian will touch on the following topics and try and answer a number of your questions right up front. First, do I have to change? This is the part of the conversation about how does this apply to me. Next, why change to DSLS? Then, Brian will explain what works with what and what is different with DSLS versus LUM that we're currently using. Finally, Brian will talk about how do I transition to DSLS. This gets into a fair amount of detail. Again, this is not a training class, but Brian will provide a high-level overview of the process and introduce you to DSLS for those of you that are not familiar with it. So with that, Brian, over to you.
Well, good afternoon, good morning for those on the West Coast. My name is Brian Olson, and let's just jump right into it and talk about the DSLS and LUM and all the different things that you may be hearing, seeing in print. And so obviously the first question is, do I have to change? The short answer is yes and no. Of course there's the option of going either way. To expand that just a little bit farther, if you are currently on a version of CATIA that you're happy with and you're currently using LUM, LUM is not going away. You can still use LUM, but the yes answer to that is that you're kind of locking yourself in, because as we get into higher and higher versions of CATIA and Smart Team, that you will be required to change over from the LUM software to the DSLS software. Take it a step farther, why the change to DSLS? Well, the big picture, let's just make sure we understand our acronyms here. LUM stands for License Use Manager. It is an IBM product, and what you've been hearing is that it'll no longer be supported as of January 1st of 2014. Now, that word supported is always a tricky one, because supported just basically means that you can no longer request assistance, or in a sense you can't complain anymore about it. It's no longer one of the supported products, and that the only supported product after 2014 will be DSLS, which stands for Dassault Systems License Server, which is a Dassault Systems product and has been operating with the Novia V6 over the last 3 or 4 years. So why is this occurring? One, it is a major change. It is a security change, an ease of use change. You just look at the documentation for LUM, and it is hard to use. It is release-based with CATIA and SmartTeam. And it is one of the final breaks of Dassault Systems and IBM. They've kind of been separating, going their own ways over the years, and this is one of the last products that IBM still has ingrained into the Dassault Systems product line. All right, so what works with what? Now let's start at the two ends. From everything from V5 R18 and earlier is LUM only. It will not be supported by DSLS, and you really don't have a choice but to use LUM in that scenario. On the other end is V5 6R-2013 and higher is DSLS only. It will not have any type of operation in order for it to work with LUM. Now, some people are seeing the V5 6R-2013 acronym for the first time. That's a fancier way of saying R23. That type of branding in the product name is how a Novia V6 operates. In fact, you'll see a Novia V6 operations just say V6 2013. So they're trying to mimic that process, and on top of that, that's CATIA rolling into DSLS also. In the middle ground, we have everything from R21 and higher. In this case, just R21 and R22, otherwise known as the official name is being V5 6R 2012. Those two can work with both. They are set up to understand LUM and DSLS, but it defaults to DSLS. It's expecting and looking for a DSLS license server. By adding a simple environment variable either to the individual workstation or to if the CATIA environments are shared, we can add a variable called DS Licensing Legacy, and that will inform CATIA to not look for DSLS, but to look for LUM. And therefore, it's looking for the different file format. SmartTeam is a little bit different. We're not going into SmartTeam very much in this particular webinar. If you need more information, please contact us. But SmartTeam is controlled by a registry value. As you're installing SmartTeam, there is actually a spot there that actually says which license server are you using, and then it writes it to its own registry. Now we get into a little bit trickier ones. We get into CATIA V5 R19 and R20. Now, this is a both issue also. The difference here is, unlike the two versions higher up, which default to DSLS, these two versions default to LUM. And secondly, these two versions don't know anything about DSLS. You can't just add a variable and say, hey, start using DSLS, because it almost didn't exist when these came out. All right, so in order to get these working, we need to apply a hotfix to CATIA. And that hotfix is service pack dependent. All hotfixes are. One thing different about service packs on CATIA and SmartTeam is that SmartTeam can accept multiple service packs, or multiple hotfixes, my fault. On the CATIA side, CATIA can only accept one hotfix. So this can get tricky if you're already using a hotfix that's required by a supplier or a customer, and then we have to make sure you're getting the hotfix that meets both the requirements for working with DSLS and incorporating the hotfix changes that were applied by your particular customer. The hotfix can be straight downloaded from the DSX ecosystem if you have a login into the download area. And once that hotfix is applied, then we're applying an environment variable to this system to say, okay, instead of using the LUM system, please work with DSLS, and it will look for that. Brief note on SmartTeam. Smart Team basically falls into the same categories. The difference here is that a hotfix has to be requested through the service request and critical situation, or QuitSit, operation with the DSLS systems support group. All right, so what is different about the DSLS? Well, one thing you're going to notice right off the bat is that it uses a different target ID. In fact, they even changed the name. Now it's called the computer ID. The target ID, which is a 8-digit alphanumeric code, now changes to a 20-digit alphanumeric code. And that includes the alpha characters in the middle and the hyphen all count as a character in this case. When you do install DSLS, it's a relatively simple installation. The documentation is very good, and you do get a panel that shows the computer ID, and if it's in a column, make sure you widen the column up a little bit. It's a little bit narrow and cuts off the last couple digits, and that'll just slow down the process of getting licenses to you because you didn't submit all 20 characters. What gets a little bit more tricky on the DSLS, and to increase security, it is now release dependent. So in my example here, where if I'm trying to run CATIA v5 6R 2013, it will not operate with the DSLS license server. Its release date is 2012. So there is a release of DSLS on a yearly basis. On the other side, if that was reversed, DSLS is downward compatible, just not upward compatible. And so in this case, if I had a license that let's say I had DSLS 2012 on my system, I just get my first CATIA, and somehow I kind of get those mixed up, then CATIA the license will not be accepted by the DSLS, and it'll give you an error that is telling you that that is the wrong version. Now, fortunately, changing from DSLS 2012 to 2013 is a very easy process. Once I do have the code, I can just uninstall 2012, reinstall 2013 or 14 or whatever year we happen to be in, and it'll just pick up the licenses and go on. You don't have to re-enroll. In the documentation, it would show that there is a button that is highlighted that says do not uncheck this, because if you did uncheck it, it would remove the licenses. But as long as that's so, there is a text file that is controlling the licenses that are installed. All right, so and the last point here is that yes, there is a DSLS to match every release of CATIA and Smart Team, and that'll push through on a yearly basis. Next, how do I actually transition from DSLS, from LUM to DSLS? The one thing that I highly recommend, no matter whether your customer is requiring CATIA v5 6R 2012 or one's lower, if you're going to DSLS, get the highest one available. So which in this case is 2013X. You will see V6 actually does their release dates. They only have 2 a year. Like for example, this year was 2013 and 2013X. You'll see that going into the future also. So in this case, 2013X is the latest. As previously with LUM, DSLS requires a physical machine. So no VMs it will install on a VM, but it won't operate. There's also on DSLS, the supported versions of OS are Windows Server 2008 R2 and Windows 7 SP1. Second step, once DSLS is installed on an appropriate machine, then reorder the licenses based on your new computer ID. In this case here, there's no cost involved. It's a transition that DASA is expecting, that as you move from one to the other. So you can't think of it, I'm fully operational with LUM, CATIA is working great, I'm at R21, R22, or I'm trying to go to R23, and that's my driver getting to DSLS. That I'll go ahead and install, request the licenses, enroll the licenses, and then go to the individual clients and start moving them over. Well, how do we do that? Well, in LUM, there's a file called the I4LS file that's located on a Windows 7 machine in Program Data, IBM LUM, where people traditionally have always seen it. A little bit different. Now you'll see it is stored in a folder called Licenses under the DSLS Systems folder. It is a very simple text file called the DSLS file. If you're only running one server for licensing, it is a simple line that is the server colon port number, and that's all that's necessary. So CATIA knows to look for DSLS, it spots that file, now knows where the server is, and it goes and requests a license. And that particular text file is handwritten. It's as a administrator, you create it the first time on your machine, and that'd be passed out to the users along with the licensing folder. And then the last step here would be to uninstall LUM. In the sense of the code of ethics, the LUM is to running with dual licensing would be considered a illegal operation in the eyes of DSO, and in the sense of having licenses on LUM and licenses on DSLS. Some of the things that are putting in place in the security, and as you noticed in the past, in fact, if you go way back where licenses were literally lasted for 20 years, now they're down to 2 years. And what you're going to see on the LUM side is that the licenses are going to went from 2 years to 1 year, and then as we get into 2014, you'll start seeing the licenses trickle down to even six-month increments. DSO is putting kind of a ratcheting scheme on trying to get you to convert, but not actually pulling the whole thing out in front of you. One other thing that they have done is that if the license is installed and operational, based on which CATIA you try to fire up, in the case of the first column on the left, R21, 2012, or 2013, it's going to compare the license values to these key numbers. One's called the max release number, and one's called the max release date. The max release date is probably the easier one of the two to understand, just because it is based on the expiration date of your license. So as long as your date is greater than this date, you're fine. The other thing you'll notice on the license in the DSL license server is this column called max release number. The numbers can range from 0 to 5. I haven't seen anything larger than 5. And based on that particular, if you're firing up 2013, and as long as you have a number that's 3, 4, or 5, it's going to allow that license to operate for that particular release of CATIA. So that can get a little bit trickier since you say, well, what do I do? I tried to launch 2013, and it does not operate because of one of these two dates or max release number. Well, that's a relatively simple change. One, it's just really a license upgrade. You will go back to the reseller, mention that, okay, my 2012 license does not operate my 2013, and that license will be reissued. We will see that there is a license number, max release number is 0. You'll see that real common on the Innovia V6 side, and when it is a 0, it's purely working off the date. All right, so summary. The thing that's causing all the havoc here is that DSO came out and said the LUM licensing routine will no longer be supported as in January 1st, 2014. And that's what got people all excited and say, oh, what do I do now? Okay, so one, LUM's not going away, but there is that ratcheting mechanism to get everyone to switch to DSLS over the next period of time. This is just one of the lines in the sand that kind of gets that roll in the right direction. Two, LUM and DSLS can run simultaneously, and they can run simultaneously on the same machine. So there are going to be cases where people will have to have both, and we'll talk about that. That's one of those interesting discussions. If I have R18 and I have also CATIA V5 6R 2013, I need both. I don't have any option around it. That gets a little trickier on the licensing because you can't just say, oh, this particular license that has, say, 5 concurrent licenses in it, I can't split that just by myself. I'll have to get adaptive involved in order to make some changes if that's even possible. So that's the kind of the worst scenario in that particular case. If I have, say, I have 2 different licenses, one has a set of 2, one has a set of 3, then I can request, well, I need this one to stay on LUM and this one needs to go to DSLS. But that throws a trickier thing into the clients. So there's a catch-22 here that each client would have to look for its particular license server. It can't look for both. As LUM, DSLS does not run on a virtual machine. We've had instances where companies are migrating to virtual machines, and all of a sudden they ended up without any physical machines for their servers. And that just plan ahead in the sense of once you get the software, DSLS will come with any packet of CATIA that's R21 or higher. Take a look at the documentation and what is supported and what you'll be fine. As I mentioned, dual-use licensing is not legal by DSLS standards, so licenses can be split between DSLS and LUM, but not run at the same time. When you look at what versions of R19 and R20 are supported by DSLS, it is based on service pack. And so in a sense of a real line of sand, DSLS is not supported from V5 R19 SP8 or lower. SP9 there's a hotfix for, and there's several hotfixes for several service packs in R20. Not all. So that is one question that will be asked if you're trying to make that change or need that particular hotfix. And we've covered a lot of things here in a relatively short period of time. Everybody is in a different scenario. Everybody from being brand new and not even knowing what LUM is all about, never having to use it. Other people who have been way back in version 4 and been using LUM for 20 years, and all of a sudden now we're now saying LUM is not necessarily going away, but now it's going to be unsupported. So if you do have any questions and what your particular scenario is based on customers that you support, releases that you support, please ask. Keep in mind that all this same thing is happening to the Hondas and Boeings and Lockheeds of the world, that it's being ratcheted down on them too. So they're in that time frame also. Frank?
Many of you may still need our help, and that's why we're here. There are a number of ways to request support. First option is to send us an email at support@adaptivecorp.net. That comes directly to our support help desk, and that gets triaged and prioritized and pushed out to Brian or whomever it's appropriate to get the best resource back with you as quickly as possible. The second way would be to contact us via telephone, and you can see our telephone number is there. If you hit option 2 during the voice response system, that'll take you directly to the help desk. If they're not available immediately to pick up the call, then you get dropped into voicemail. The voicemail gets wrapped into an email and gets forwarded to the technical support help desk, so we generally see that within a minute after receiving your message. Third way is via our website. Under the support tab of the home page, there's a form. So if you fill out the form with your contact name, an email address, a telephone number, and then hit submit, the response comes to us immediately and is queued for the appropriate support response as well. Adaptive will issue DSLS licenses at no charge when you are ready. please try to allow us about a 1-week window to request the license and get them to you. You will need to know the new DSLS target ID, or as Brian suggested, it's now called the computer ID. You'll need to know that at the time that you request the license. If you do not know how to obtain the new computer ID after reviewing the FAQ, again, we're happy to assist, and that won't cost you a dime. Adaptive will offer standard support to DSLS server install. This is considered a basic install via telephone and web. Generally, from what we've seen, somebody didn't catch a little detail on an FAQ, or maybe just some little nuance that didn't get saved properly. Generally, those support calls are fairly quick, and again, we're happy to help with that. Next slide, if you would, Brian. So still on the subject of support. Still waiting for it to transition here. There you go. So still on the subject of support, there are going to be some options when it might be billable. So in terms of when it might be billable, so in the event that the support request that you have involves some other complexity over and beyond what would be considered kind of a standard install, so examples might include firewalls, WANs, clustered environments, or maybe you just need more planning and help. That may become a level of support that would be outside of our standard support, and that would be billable. We have not encountered this situation yet, but we felt that it was necessary to address it in the event that this issue surfaces. If you're going to do a pilot for an environment for testing and or stage rollout, multiple installs may become billable as well. Certainly, if you want to use this as a lifeline to handle DSLS issues, as well as other ongoing technical support issues, Adaptive offers a prepaid telephone support agreement that provides you access to our help desk as needed. We typically offer this in 5-hour increments, but we can also offer pay-as-you-go support services as well. If this is of interest, certainly please let us know. So with that, we'll go on to Q&A throughout.